Yeah, we can talk about that. I can talk about a bit more than what's known about as well. That's not really well known. I can tell you about the Bathia Hills. There's a lot happening there.
Yeah, the BAFTA. Is it more UFO sightings at the BAFTA Hills?
Yeah, it's more than UFO sightings.
Yeah, because I did pick up. I think I was watching something the other day. Is it Calderwood?
Deckmentwood?
Mid Calderwood.
Mid
I
Calder.
might be getting that wrong.
No, there is things in Mid Calder, but that's not well known. We certainly can talk about that. I'm aware of some stuff around there. I was involved in a paranormal group that did stuff around Mid Calder, so we can talk about the history of Mid Calder, and I can talk about some of the ghosts that have been seen. I'm not privy to all the information. I was privy.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, there's some stuff I don't know about, but there's been 3 ghosts being seen in Mid Calderwood, and I can tell you a bit more about that as we go along if you want. That's no bother.
Perfect. I expect we better test this if there's anybody out there listening. Hi guys, is there anybody listening? If you could just put in the comments that we're live and you can see us, that'd be really great. We've got Mark on tonight, really good into ufology and paranormal. So fire some questions through for him.
Easy questions though.
Right, let's go. Are you ready?
Always ready.
Hit the button then.
It's now time for you to sit back in your chair and let your mind wander into the deepest, darkest parts of your brain and let Russ and Paul take you on a journey to the unexplained.
Good evening, guys, and welcome to Journey Through the Unexplained, live and exclusive on YouTube and Facebook tonight. And we are so lucky to have, as you can see, a 4th member of the team tonight, and all the way from Scotland, the lovely Mark Anderson. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Hey guys, thank you for having me on today. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Not a problem. Well, to be fair, it all come quite. I don't know how you found us, but you started to comment, didn't you, on a previous show, and and then we said we'd like to go to Scotland, and you said, well, if you ever want to come to Scotland, I'll show you around, and it sort of transpired from there, really.
Yeah, it was just by luck. I was on Facebook, and Thursday nights is generally looking after children and all that jazz. And it just came on Facebook to say, here, your show's on, started listening to it, and really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed your show, what you guys were speaking about. And I heard you talking about Scotland. I'm like, oh, Scotland. So yeah, it was good to chat.
So let's start off with the basic question. I'm going to ask everybody, like I do every week, Simon, have you had a good week?
Yeah, brilliant. Because I'm getting ready to go, aren't I? So nothing's going to disturb me now.
Rub it
3
in.
days, mate.
Rub it in. Mr. Paranormal Paul, how has your week been?
Don't want to talk about it. No, it's not been too bad. It's been hot. It's been hard. And I keep trying to book a day off, but like Simon, everyone's already gone on their hollybobs. So I'm stuck at work, sweating, trying to rehydrate the amount of liquid I've left my body today working. But there you go. But we shall power on through, mate.
But don't you find the more you drink, the more you spend in the toilet?
Oh, mate, yeah, it's never ending. Yeah, I'm kind of regretting doing that couple of pints of water before the show.
Yeah, I've got mine all ready to go. And Mark, how is your week?
Get to my age.
Yeah, it's been a really good week actually. We had the Scottish Paranormal Conference on Saturday, so that was a lot of the big names in Scotland. So that's probably guys you've heard about, like Malcolm Robinson. There's also other few people, some really good researchers. Alison Dunlop, who is kind of the unsung hero who does all the organising for the conference, organised a spectacular conference this year. We had some really good speakers. So, yeah, that's one of the highlights. Honestly, it's one of the highlights of my year. Is actually going to the conference and did that on Saturday. So it was a brilliant night, brilliant day.
I suppose that's just being sort of around like-minded people.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's what it is. It's more the people that you meet in the community that's been building that makes it all worthwhile. And you make, to be honest, a lot of the people who are in the paranormal community have become very good friends, very dear friends as well. And I don't think my life would definitely be completely different without the friends and the relationships that I've built through the paranormal community. So to me, it's a very it's a big part of my life, and the community that is here is a big part of. It means a great deal to me. So yeah, it was great to see everybody and meet new friends.
That's refreshing to hear, actually. Really refreshing to hear.
Yeah.
And I say, sort of how we know each other. So Simon is my uncle, and Paul is one of our team members for the EGH team, Essex Ghost Hunters. And when we talk about paranormal, and just like what you were saying there, our lives would be totally different without each other, wouldn't they? They would. How it brings you together in a way that people can't imagine. I suppose it's, you know, for us, we're a group of friends that sit in dark rooms all night calling out to things that are not there. If you actually put that in realistic terms, they'd think you're all a bunch of nutters and you all should be put in a mental asylum. But we all get on.
Yeah. I've actually got a funny story around that. It's a bit rude. Is it okay to tell you?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So my second ever Skywatch with one of the main groups in Scotland is called Strange Phenomena Investigations, and it was. Oh, excuse me, I'm about to get hit by Michael. Sorry, this is Michael. Michael's severely autistic, guys. So if you want, very much like what's been spoken about the telepathy tapes. With Kai Dickens, Michael's here. So sorry about that.
That's okay. No worries whatsoever.
Yeah. So anyway, my second ever Skywatch, and there was a place in Glasgow, and I don't even know. We all got told meet at this McDonald's. So there was about half a dozen cars. We all went up. There's about 20 of us, and we saw cars going in and out and in and out all the night, and we realised this is a dogging location that we're. And anyway, at the end of the night, most cars had realised like there's a group of people just standing about, like looking with glasses and all that, looking absolutely cornless, like, and they just thought, nah, this is too weird. So it was just us, and then as our group left, there was only 2 cars left. There's myself and an older chap called Ian, who's one of the best psychics I've ever met. He's just a phenomenal guy. Ian's got long hair, and we're in a car, and we're talking about reincarnations. I'm having a cup of tea and a hobnob, and get a chap on the window. Please. And we even got the light on, just, and they're like, "What are you doing here?" Like with my hobnob and my cup of tea. I'm like. And I panicked. I said, "We're looking for meteors," and then I looked at it. It was absolutely like the cloud was like all clouded over. I'm like, the police officer went, "Really?" I went, "Yeah." so I had a bit of explaining, but the guy just said, "Look, as long as you're safe, off you go." That was it. But yeah, second ever Skywatch, I was mistaken for a dogger, so I had to go and explain to people when I came back. Like there was a bit of a misunderstanding with the police the other day, but it was all good.
Well, to be fair, it has a very similar story to our first outing when we went to our ghost hunt, because one of our favourite ghost hunt locations is a well-known dogging site, and we had us as well. So it must be a paranormal thing rather than
maybe it's the energies that draw them in.
Yeah. It's
What did they ask us? Are you the Midnight Ramblers?
Yeah, that was it.
Seriously, I did.
The Midnight Ramblers. Right, let's crack on with the show and let's start talking to Mark about some serious paranormal activity and paranormal stuff. So I just want to ask you a question based on what you've just said there. You say paranormal. So obviously I've sort of only touched base with you based on the ufology side of things. So do you have sort of an affiliation with sort of the ghost hunting side of things as well? Have we lost Mark?
I think he's frozen out.
I think we've lost Mark. Of all the times, you know, this happens every time that we have a guest on, and I told you it's going to be fun tonight, didn't we? I told you it was going to be fun tonight.
I think Mark is part of a paranormal group, or was. I'm sure. But when he comes back on, he'll tell us.
Yeah. Let's Well, are you back, Mark? No, he's gone. So hopefully he will rejoin the.
Have we got anybody in the chat?
We haven't at the moment, but we haven't. But if you are listening, guys, can you just pop a comment into the chat so we know that your internet has just gone down. I told you there was something in the air tonight. Told you. I absolutely told you there was something in the air. Absolutely. Let me just go back to him because I have to go so many different ways to get back to people. No worries.
Right.
Just rejoin when you can. Who's in the chat? Yeah, so we have got people in the chat. It seems to be a very, very strange night. Claire, like, hi here. I know Mark, so watching tonight. Hi, Claire. Nice to have you on. We've lost Mark. We've just lost Mark. He's just restarting his internet. Just as we was getting into everything, we happened to lose Mark, which is not great, is it? But you've got us three. Evening, Paul. So we've got Paul, we've got Claire, we've got the lovely Kim also in the chat. I hope Claire, Paul, hopefully this is, we're sort of going to be touching on the ufology side of things tonight. Obviously, I was just about to ask Mark about, you know, the what he uses his paranormal side of things. Welcome back, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
I told you it was going to be an interesting night. I knew something was in the air tonight.
Yeah, the internet's been a bit off today, actually. So sorry if I'm jumping off like that. If it still goes on, what I'll do is I'll jump onto my mobile and do you.
Honestly, it's absolutely no worries whatsoever. We'll just go where we sort of left off. I was just about to ask you the question: is you use the word paranormal? Okay, so does that mean, you know, obviously I touched base with you about ufology and things like that. So is this something that you also do, like maybe sort of the paranormal field, ghost hunting, paranormal investigations, or do you just base yourself necessarily in the ufology side of things?
I've got to admit, the past few years have been more ufology, although I've been involved in a lot of paranormal groups in the past and loads of ghost hunting all over the place. But I've not done a ghost hunt for about 3 years or so, so it's not been there. I've not been doing it as much. Still interested in the paranormal investigations, but it's just the groups that I was in have kind of all they've kind of died off a bit, and that sorry to say that, but it's that's just the way it is. So I haven't been doing as many investigations. The last one I did was just outside of Edinburgh, and it was quite interesting. But we've had some great paranormal ghost investigations in the past, seen a lot of good things, but it's mainly UFOs now. That's what I'm only focused on. What I found is, though, is a few places that maybe will have like different types of phenomena that maybe have ghosts and UFOs, and I'm actively involved. I'm actively researching one just now in a region called Fife. So Fife is well known for like having St Andrews in it, which is the home of golf, and that's where William and Kate went to study at university. Just nearby, well, it's about 15, 20 miles away. It's a really weird area where people are seeing like big cats. There's been a ghost being seen. There's been a couple of UFOs, and one guy got just like absolutely pinned to the ground, just like this invisible force just pinned him to the ground. Also nearby where I live is a place called Bathgate Hills, and there's a lot of phenomena happening there. I've been investigating around a couple of speaking to people and noticed that there's been a few ghost sightings from there as well. So there is definitely, I've not been doing the investigation so much, but certainly keeping my hand in where I can with the paranormal.
But it all sounds like it sort of links in there. That Fife sort of area, what you've just been talking about, and so you're actively investigating at the moment. And I can't help it, but I'm sure you said, I think you just said something along the line. There was a gentleman that was pinned down by an invisible force.
Yeah. So it was. I'm actually trying to set up a group to meet him. And I've spoken to him a few times. I met the guy, and I actually lived nearby myself. And he's got a house in the middle of the countryside. And he was walking down. There's a field nearby his house, and he just like was pinned to the ground by this invisible force. He just kept there for a few minutes, and then got up and left. Now, there's a few interesting things around there that I find. A few things that I find really interesting around there. It's about a mile or 2 miles away from an investigation what Malcolm Robinson did, where like grey aliens were seen like flying around in bubbles and actually taking stuff out and flying around. And also, it's very close to what's called the Rose Line. So if you're watching Da Vinci Code, for example, and say where it goes between Notre Dame and Roslin, if you keep on going about another, about 30 miles or so, you're actually getting pretty close to where this area is. So I'd like to know more about ley lines and I'm trying to get a guy who's really into ley lines into this area to investigate with me. But there's a lot of phenomena. That guy being pinned down in that.
I think we might lose Mark again. Sounds like his internet is really, really playing up at the moment. Just as you get into the good bits.
I know, yeah.
Just as you get into the good bits. Hopefully he might jump back on his mobile, as he said, which might give us a bit of a better signal. Yeah, he's going to try and get back on again in a minute. So it's all we have to do is just wait. Let's see and go from there. Paul, have you been on the government website about UFO sightings? They list where, when, and the time of the sightings. I have been on and off that website, Paul. I do use it quite often, especially when I see sightings myself. I don't actually put the sightings on there, but I do use it just in case that it corresponds in what I see, and go from there, really. So, yeah, I don't know if I 100% believe a government.
They put all the sightings on there, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
They put the sightings that they want you to see.
Yeah, the ones that aren't true, I should think, more than the ones that are.
No, they may be true, but I probably think it deflects from the real ones.
Mm.
But
yes,
yeah,
I would say exactly the same as well. Hiya, Jane. Hiya, Jane.
Hi, Jane.
Yeah, I'll just wait for Mark to come back on, and yeah, so we'll just go along that line. The government, Simon, you're saying, but once again, it's along that line of they hide it in plain sight motion.
Yeah, I'll go along with that.
You know, maybe as you're right, Simon. I think you could be right. They, they could be the ones on there, but
well, there's got to be someone auditing them anyway, isn't there? Saying, look, this was because it's public funding. There's always someone should be sort of auditing. Look, that's logged. Why ain't that up there? That's logged. Why ain't that up there? I mean, obviously, you ain't going to put every single sighting on there, surely.
I wouldn't think so.
The truth. once again.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, exactly that.
Look at that sighting over the States the last couple of days and what that caused. And then it was obviously, quite clearly a rocket that was issued. Did you see it? The rocket go up, caused the bubble as it went up.
Didn't see that.
It was quite spectacular, to be fair. But it was something to do along the lines of a test run for NASA or something like that. And when you focused right in on it, it was a shape. It was pretty. It was like what do you call it? Something going across the sky, like. So yeah, it was very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I have got Mark, and let's see if we can get Mark back. Mickey is in the chat as well. Evening, Mickey.
Hey.
Mark, you're all right.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah. I'm just going to jump off. I'm going to get a pair of headphones. You can hear. They can't hear you. Sorry, guys.
That's all right. No worries. We'll technology. What was it you said the other day, Paul? Can you say that?
We don't rely on everything on technology, isn't it?
Technology is a bane of all evil at this moment in time. It really is. What happened last week was really bizarre because a lot of things went down without a lot of people knowing. A lot of it was to do with Google. Google Cloud went down, which is a backup of a lot of things that went down.
Yeah.
So just bear with us for a minute. We're just trying to get Mark back on. He's having technical issues, obviously, with internet and things like that. So once we get Mark back, just as it was getting interesting about what is it? A mystical force pinning someone down,
and the ley lines, wasn't it? Trying to get someone in to investigate the sort of the ley lines and where the connection is between activity.
It's definitely something. It has to be. There has to be a link. Right.
Sorry about this tonight. This is it just seemed to be happening intermittently. I've been relatively okay today, and then all of a sudden the internet's having Wi-Fi issues. So I'm really sorry for this.
No,
don't apologise. It happens every time we hit a certain topic. Our internet usually goes skew with.
Yeah, this isn't uncommon for our show, Mark. This is very, very common. We do, as I said to you, I had things loading up on my computer that I never touch, and I've got lights flickering. So I said to you before the show, we're in for a good night. It's either someone's listening, or we've got what they call it, the ghosts in the machine. But let's crack back straight on, because you was talking about ley lines and things like that, and this mystical force that was pinning this gentleman down. So we'll just back on that.
Yeah, so it was in Fife. So just for a bit of context, I lived nearby for about 10 years. And I lived in a town just the next town over. And the house I lived in was extremely haunted, had loads of things happening. And then nearby is a small town. I live in a town called Markinch. And this town is just, honestly, it's about a mile away. This guy was walking down the field, and he just felt he just was forced down to the ground and just pinned to the ground. Held there for about a minute or two, and released, and that was him let go. It's close to where Malcolm Robertson had investigated in the past. I mean, Malcolm calls this the Fife incident, where a family were driving along and they saw like small grey aliens actually carrying materials and flying about in small bubbles. Now, there's a bit of controversy about that case, but certainly nearby, certainly where I live, there's a lot of other paranormal phenomena happening, and it's seen by numerous witnesses. Probably the biggest one, though, is that guy who just like pinned down with this invisible force, just no rhyme or reason, just was forced down to the ground and kept there.
That must have been terrifying.
Wow.
It must be, yeah. I've met the guy. He was absolutely sincere, and I'm meeting up again because he's had another encounter with a big cat. And over and above the big cat sighting that he's had, there's the local community, the local Facebook community, have actually started reporting big cats there. And we even found there's a filmmaking crew out there actually reporting on about it as well. So it's not well known. It's not as well known as places like Bonnybridge in Scotland or Roslyn, but certainly there does seem to be a paranormal hotspot. And it seems to be in about a 5 mile area. It seems to be quite a big area, but it's super interesting. And we've had loads of things that happen around there. I started a small group nearby in a town called Dundee, and we had guys talking about it. Again, this in this local vicinity, phantom monks on roads. Some people having like quite heavy paranormal encounters in their houses, big cats, and a UFO as well. So it's an active area. It's really active.
It sounds like, for obviously like-minded people like us, it sounds amazing.
Sounds great.
Good. Yeah, it's a great one. And these are people that I've. One thing as well is I've actually made friends with these people, speak to them quite often, and they're completely legit. There's no making up or silliness or trying to get attention. It's genuine people who are genuinely seeing things.
Mark, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Had he had experiences like that before, or was that his first experience?
I'm not sure if the witnesses had any experiences before. If I'm honest, I'm not entirely sure of the of his background. I've only met him once. Came across as really sincere, but I'm going back to meet him again because of the second encounter that he's had with the big cat.
Cool.
So I've sort of also got sort of a question. Does he believe if it was UFO or spirit, like a ghost, or does he feel it was like maybe like an alien, or something along them lines? Does he have an opinion on it?
Not that I'm aware of. It was just it was very matter of fact. It was pinned down to the ground. It was just a force, and that was it. So there was nothing like it's an alien or it's a fairy or anything like that. It was just that. It was just a story and nothing more.
It might be interesting though to find out if he has had any paranormal experience in the past. I think if he's never had any sort of experience like that and then have something like that happen,
Mm-hmm.
it must be feel 10, 100 times more, severe than if you're kind of been working around it and you think that's paranormal. Whereas if you've never had anything before, you're like, what the?
Yeah, definitely. He's so. I didn't do like the proper doing that when you do like when you have like MUFON like sort of like notebook to go through to talk to about an incident. I didn't do anything like that. I just it was just Facebook chats, and then actually went to meet him and just spoke to him. So that was actually a weakness in my investigation. I've got to admit, normally if it's UFO investigation, generally I've got to the big sheet to what you go through, and half of it doesn't even actually apply to the UFO sighting. But in this case, I was just meeting the guy and getting a gist of what he was saying, and he just came across as completely genuine. But since then, he's also had the big cat sighting as well, and that's numerous ones. There's actually about 20 years ago, there's an old like estate there called Balburney, and it was owned by the Balfour family. They still own a lot of land around that area, and it was at one point there was actually newspapers going out called the Beast of Balburney, and there was cited reports of like swans being attacked by some sort of big cat entity. So yeah, there's a lot around there, and myself, I've had in the house I lived in, I had a lot of paranormal experiences happen there myself, and a lot of it was like stuff like electrics, like what you're saying about tonight. A lot of it was like electrics going, or like.
So you're to blame. So I'm blaming you straight off the bat.
Yeah, actually, do you know? I'll give you a laugh. I was investigating a case. I live in a town called Livingston now, and it's famous. One of its more famous things is for the Bob Taylor incident called Dickman Woods, and where a guy was attacked by a UFO back in 1979. And there's still, to this day, we still get occasional UFO sightings. And about 4 years ago, I was investigating a UFO sighting in the area I live in. And then the woman messaged me about a year later saying, having some paranormal experiences. And literally about a minute before she messaged me, my toaster just went up in flames. And then she messaged me saying, I'm having issues with ghosts. I'm having electrical problems. And then just before that, my toaster went, and I'm like, that's scary.
I would say, I think we're all linked some way. I always say I think the paranormal field is linked some way. So many questions keep coming into my head. I say, you've had one there from Paul. Did you know if the gentleman was witnessed time stopping? Did time stand still?
Not that I'm aware of.
No.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
But so I'm just going to, because obviously you say things, I jot things down. So I do apologize that I go backwards and forwards, but
No,
I know it doesn't really apply to what you were saying, but you said there was an incident around that area of these extraterrestrials beings, grey aliens, working around bubbles.
Yeah, so this is it's called the Fife incident, and Malcolm Robinson's spoken about it quite extensively. It's just outside of a town called Fruki. So it's about 1.5 miles, 2 miles away from where I had, where the witness had his experience. And by the way, there's multiple witnesses to this. What's going on here? There's not just that one chap. But the Fife incident happened in 1996, and Fruki is there's a kind of a road that goes right through Fife, and it's only one. It's like a single carriage road, also dual carriage, one going one way, another going the other way, and it's a horrible road, and there's not much to the town of Fruki. Nearby, there's another town called I can't remember, Falkland, and the family were driving between Falkland and Fruki, and they saw some alien-like beings in a field, and the aliens were said to be picking up materials like canisters, and then flying in bubbles, if you ever saw the latest Oz movie, they would like go in a bubble and like fly away. Well, that's what apparently these entities were doing. And then they came back, still saw the aliens there with a friend of theirs, and that's as much as I can remember about the incident. But it happened. They saw it twice in the same night, basically. But what's interesting about that family is that they were repeatedly like hounded by these greys for a long time afterwards. Like they would see like portals in their house, and they'd see like greys coming out of it. The young lad was actually saying that they were actually in the house while Malcolm and the other SPI team were actually in the house with them. And at one point, there were very rare description when the greys had teeth. When the young lad was in the shower, go up and saw like a grey with teeth. It's only ever been seen once ever, apart from that in someplace in South America. So Malcolm's actually written books about it, and it's one of the better known places in Scotland. But I think it's interesting. But what's interesting, one of the other guys who's seen things in and around this area has other encounters. I think it's okay for me to speak about it now. He was on Paul Sinclair's show about it, and he's also on my podcast as well. There's another town called Kirkcaldy. It's on the waterfront of the River Forth. So a lot of history to it. There's a lot of things that you can talk about with Kirkcaldy. But he was walking between there and another town called Leven, and as he was walking down that town, down between these towns, down this countryside road, he was actually being stalked by some sort of dogman entity, and it kept on stalking him for miles and miles. He said he was actually petrified. It happened in 1986. He only spoke about it to me about late last year, and we had him on the podcast. Since then, he's been on Paul Sinclair's show, a guy called Stan Smith, and yes, he also talked. If you listen to the last transmission with Paul Sinclair, he actually talks about not only his encounter, but also a lot of the the encounters that I'm talking about as well. The ghosts that have been seen in Fife recently. So yeah, it's a pretty busy area.
Sorry, can I just? Did you say a dog man?
A dog man, yeah. So I know there's been like maybe you'd be thinking about Skinwalker Ranch, but there have been reports of a dog man. That dog man was in Fife. There's Malcolm Robertson's just come out with a dog man sighting right next to me where I take my dog out for a walk, which isn't much fun now going there for a walk now, but
Dog will let you know before
yeah.
you realise.
Yeah, it's like you just go by yourself. I'll be right here next time. But it's in a place called Deckman Woods where a guy called Bob Taylor was attacked by a UFO. I don't know. I think it's been in the past 5 years. Don't know exactly when it was, but there was a dog man being seen in the woods, and it was seen by an owner who had 2 huskies, were not afraid of anything. But apparently, this entity came out of the shadows, and the huskies were like, "No, not having it," and ran away. So, yeah, that's near. That's only about a mile away from where I live, and yeah, so there's been a few sightings like that, but nothing I've seen.
I think sorry, I'm going to jump in here, guys. I just want to. Of everything that you said there, I think the one thing that would terrify me. I mean, I kind of grew up in a haunted house, and I not so much in apparitions growing up, more as things moving about around me. But I have seen things, apparitions, sort of coming up.
Mm-hmm.
But if I ever see a grey with teeth,
yeah,
I think that family must have been petrified.
They moved. They actually moved. And none of the SPI members know where they moved to.
Yeah.
They moved. So again, this was before I was involved with the paranormal. I think this was around about 1998. It happened, where the guy, where the young lad saw teeth. He was only about 10, 11 years old by that point, and he just moved, cut off all contact with SPI, and that was the end. But
I mean,
yeah.
Like you said, it sounded like they were kind of stalking them, if you like, after they sighted them in the field.
Yeah.
But to me, I can't get my head around that. I mean, if they were actively trying to go out and find them again, so it would, to me, that would be more like a warning, stop looking for us, stay away. Whereas if they're just carrying on with their normal life, but because they sighted them, I don't know, what would that, would you take some of that energy away from you because you was near them, so they can sense that you've? That's where my head goes. What would cause them to? I'm not asking you to answer that, by the way. Yeah. I'm just trying to. I'm thinking out loud. What would cause that kind of scenario? Because you've sighted them, you're then. I'd be petrified. I would be petrified.
Yeah, but Paul, you'd have been probably in Manchester before.
Four marathons in one,
But see, some people would.
With the teeth, when Paul said I'd be terrified if I saw the teeth, I'm like thinking Paul would have been terrified if the door opened.
Yeah, yeah.
Saw a finger come round the door. Let them know.
Mark, don't believe a word of it, mate. I've just got this name about me now because I run once.
I'm usually the guy that runs the fastest and the quickest.
I've just got quick reflexes. That's all it is. It's quick reactions to danger.
Yeah, there's it's generally follow the mark-shaped blur if something dangerous happens. Like I've had numerous encounters myself with UFOs over the years, and
do you walk towards her, Paul? Mark, do you walk towards, or would you back off?
Previously when I've had numerous encounters over the years, and generally they were between 11 and 22, and they didn't happen every night or nothing like that. I think I had about 20 to 30 encounters over the space of 11 years, and then a couple of those times it was maybe after every day for about 2 weeks on 2 occasions. But so apart from that, it was extremely sporadic. Maybe once, like sometimes it'd be as little as 5 years or so. But there's a few encounters which were quite far away, and there's other encounters where they got really close or something happened. What you're saying, Russ, about time, I wasn't stopping, but I actually sped up. And that time I walked towards the, it wasn't actually a craft. I got something that was like, it's like I know they're there. It's like a spidey sense.
Yeah.
And you it's not just that it's like, as a comical analogy, imagine you've been out all night in the pub and you know you're going to come, when you come back home, you're going to get in trouble for the missus. And it's exactly, it was like that sort of, you know that there's something there, that something's going to happen. And I walked in, it's an abandoned bit of land. I walked into it, and I must have stayed there for about 5 minutes or something like that, and time sped up. And I know I knew time sped up because the clouds started moving faster. So imagine going to YouTube, seeing a picture that's got clouds on it, and put it on to 2, 3, 4 times the speed. That's exactly what happened.
Wow.
And my nerves in the hand lasted that long, so long, that 5 minutes, and I felt I can't do this. I'm too scared, and I just had to get out there. It was just too much for me. So I'll walk up to them. So to answer your question, Si, I'll walk up to them to a point. But if they get too close to me, or I feel a bit, this is basically what I'm trying to say. Is I try to feel like I want to feel in control. I mean, they've gone too far and going beyond what I feel comfortable with. I'm out of there. But so I honestly will not be
being sensible, mate. Sensible.
Well, yeah, actually, I remember Steve. I spoke to Steve Mera about that, and he was saying there's a reason why you ran, but like honestly, I would not be winning any bravery awards anytime soon, guys. That's for sure.
No shame in that, mate. No shame in that. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody in the chat. I've got Heidi in the chat. Good evening. Julia as well. Good evening. Thank you for watching, everybody. I do believe that we've got a friend of yours as well in the chat that follows you as well.
Claire.
Claire. She said she knows you. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please feel free to send any questions over to us. We'll try and answer them. I'm just going to sort of pick a few things out there. I just want to go back to the bubbles again.
Yeah.
We've witnessed the same sort of thing in Cannock Chase.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
not personally. I don't think so. I think it was one of our team members, Sandra.
It was Sandra,
The
yeah.
same thing, like UFO, no, like an alien creature in a bubble, walking around in a bubble, which I find quite fascinating, really, because I'd never heard of that before, and now you've mentioned it, and now I can sort of tie that to now Sandra, who witnessed that same sort of, and Sama, it really affected Sandra quite badly that evening after witnessing what she witnessed. I don't think Sandra witnessed any sort of grey particular, the grey sign. I think hers was more sort of, the blonde hair, blue eyes sort of, or the Sumerians or something.
Yeah, it was.
So that's quite a fascinating link, to be fair. I'm quite interested in that side of things. How we can link two stories that obviously one up sort of in Scotland and then one into the Midlands sort of area, just above, which we've got potentially two different species of alien using the same sort of either what I would call technology, cloaking technology in these bubbles, or some form of vehicle or breathing apparatus, maybe, that they are using. Yeah, but I don't get the bubble side of it. The bubble, I can't. The bubble is quite. The link is the bubble. Take out the species in it. The bubble is in my head. It's like there has to be a link. What is that link? What these extraterrestrials are using now as this bubble? What is the bubble? That's my question in my head. Not to make you answer that, Mark. That's just a logical question that in my head now is going around.
Head scratcher, but there's a couple of ways we can answer that. Or a couple, not answer it, but surmise about it. So, and it would be different depending on different species. So let's say, like a grey alien, if you look at their bodies, for example, they're quite thin, they're quite fragile. Basically, their ability to handle gravity on this planet is going to be much different from the way that we're going to be able to handle it. They may also have different immune systems. So I'm going to assume that, let's say, Lou Alexandro's right, and all these grey aliens have got some form of human DNA in them. That means that they're probably, or got the potential to be susceptible to things that we're susceptible to. You'd want to have some sort of like enclosed environment. First of all, they're using it to transport, so they're moving about this field, like jumping in the bubble and then moving along. But over and above the transportation, the question I'd be asking: could this like reduce gravity so they don't have the same impact in gravity? Could it be like they can have this sort of environment is a bit more suited towards what they're suited to? And if you look at some of the cases, even in Scotland, there's actually some things to support that. Near where I live is a road called the A70, and there was a famous abduction case called the Harper Rig incident with a guy called Colin Wright and Gary Woods. Now, I've met Gary Woods a number of times, and he's one of the most humble, down-to-earth guys you've ever met. 100%, I believe this guy. He said that he was abducted by them, that one of the greys actually came out of this, like, it's almost like a bathtub. And when, like, telepathically asked him, like, what does Gary asked, what do you want? He went, sanctuary. And again, guys, you can look on this on YouTube. These are not things I've researched. These are Malcolm Robinson's cases. But certainly, I've met Gary a few times and 100% believe him. So I'm wondering, is it things like environmental things that they're looking for? Are they getting something from the earth that gives them that sort of sanctuary? And are they just makes it a bit easier for them to get about and it's a bit more comfortable for them because they're kind of in their own type of environment?
It's a very interesting concept. I think that was sort of linking quite to Paul's question here. Do you think over the years they've learned to live in our atmosphere? As you said, the greys look, with the potential of human DNA attached to them, and I think there has been some form of species that has walked among us, and I do think they have learned to adapt to our atmosphere. But I also believe that there is certain species that may not be able to adapt to our atmosphere too well. Maybe what these bubbles are for, as you say, it could be many different until we actually someone can physically ask them and they're willing to give an answer. It's a lot of surmising, which I think. So to say to Simon and Paul, any questions that you want to ask?
I've got a slight. Is it a question? Yeah, it's a question. What's your thoughts on just talking about that with the atmosphere and maybe, with the bubbles and things like that? Because I know we've kind of done a show on this in the past, Russ, about the devolution of the human race. When you say about the DNA of the aliens to the humans, do you believe that in some cases, are they future ancestors of ours that have found a way of time and space travel type thing coming back where we've possibly destroyed the planet in the future? They've evolved into the greys that we're seeing, and they're somehow managing to say either parallel universe or future universe travel back to gather things before the Earth's no longer producing the things that they're gathering. What's your thoughts on that? Clear.
The honest answer is I don't know. And the one thing I'm a little bit nervous about saying, yeah, it could be or something like that. Now, anything's possible. But one thing I think we need to look at is how this phenomenon has changed over the decades and the centuries. So, say, for example, in Scotland, there's a couple of cases of fairies, or what would be called changelings, for example. So the two famous ones would be a guy called Robert Kirk, who actually wrote a book about it, and another guy called Thomas the Rhymer. And Thomas the Rhymer came from the borders of Scotland, and he claimed that these fairies whisked him away, and he lived in their domain for a long time. I think it was a few days, but since years have passed, and he came back. So that time seemed to be different in the fairy land compared to our land. Now, moving forward, now it's Greys, then it's Nordics. It, the phenomenon has changed. And the other thing about it is not so much with the aliens, but certainly the way the craft are changing. And if you look at like things like Euphoric data sets, the craft and how people are reporting them seem to be changing. And it makes it difficult to say anything with any form of confidence, because we've had this sort of phenomenon for centuries in different forms. We just don't know what it is. So it could be potentially a future uh, a future race. But look at the Greys, for example. Look how different they are. They're much smaller. They're skinless. And their eyes are larger. So having large eyes would surmise that you have less light. So it mean that either there'd been some form of nuclear winter, some sort of like Venetian sort of cloud, or they've gone underground. So potentially these things are possible, but we don't know. We don't have enough evidence, and but unfortunately, the goalposts seem to change as soon as we think we know what it is. We think it's Zeta Reticuli and it's the grey aliens. Something else comes in and makes it just harder uh, to give a definitive answer. So sorry, it's a long way of saying I really don't know.
No, yes.
No, but yeah.
But you know, what you're saying to me sort of makes sense. You know, sometimes you overlook these things, and like talking to you and things like that. You know, for me, I know it sounds really stupid, but the eye thing, I've never thought about that. The big eyes, I've never thought about that in context of why do they have big eyes? What is that all about? Now that's just made it perfectly clear in my head potentially why that fits. You know, it's just me being silly, I should think, but makes
do
sense.
you think they live amongst us, Mark?
I think there's a possibility. I think
so.
there's a guy who I know down from Sheffield, and he's a phenomenally good psychic, and he's actually had encounters with hybrids in the past, and from that I trust this guy, and I think he's got a point. I've never seen an alien. I would absolutely run another mile. I'm from Dundee. You probably wouldn't tell the difference if an alien, the difference between aliens. But honestly, I really don't. I don't know, but I do have spoken to people who I trust who said yeah they do. Hope that's a good enough answer. But sorry, I can't give you.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I
That's a
truly
great answer, yeah.
amongst us. I think they do. I think they 100% walk amongst
So,
us.
yeah, 100%.
How that fit, how they walk amongst us, I wouldn't want to sort of, you know, if we go along sort of like the David Icke sort of way of thinking, sort of that way, potentially. I know that we've had, you know, some famous people in the past that have supposed to have shape shifted in front of us and things like that. I get all that. I just can't be 100% sure how they walk amongst us, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And what I try to do is I only tell cases on podcasts that have either been given on conferences or I've been permission to talk about. And I kept this one for a while, but it's and the reason I'm only telling.
Don't lose you now.
Yeah. As soon as he said get permission to talk about certain subjects, Bosh, cut that.
Just as we get to that good part,
Yeah.
you know,
I
it's
know, I
like
think
an
it's
episode of EastEnders,
right.
isn't it? It's, you know, it sounds like this area in Fife is some.
I think they've got a lot of areas up there because I think he's already mentioned it. The BAFTA Hills. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but the BAFTA Hills, Bonnie Bridge. I think there's a hell of a lot up there. But then there's a hell of a lot down here that we don't know about. Like,
Yeah.
like the South Downs. We've never investigated that. But
No, but
we
just
know it's there.
you know, but there's sort of places around the UK. I'm not just talking about, but how hot spots happen. We're talking about a lot of things there that happen in one particular area. We're not just talking about ufology,
No,
we're talking
yeah,
paranormal ghosts. You know, I want to sort of go. I sort of want to pick his brains a little bit, not pick his brains, but ask more of the question about what is this? The big cat that he's talking about. Is that along the lines of sort of Bigfoot, or is
Well,
it?
he's
No,
also,
the
he's
body,
also seen the Silver Man. You know that, or I think he's investigated the Silver Man, and that I think is in the BAFTA Hills.
Well, hopefully he'll come back on them. Just sorry, Paul, you was about to say something as well.
Sorry, mate.
when you said about the cat, I think is it the Bodmin Moors, Bodmin cat?
Yeah.
It's like that sort of. I'm assuming it's that sort of thing.
It is like we're talking about a cat, four-legged
Yeah.
with a
Yeah.
long.
Like a panther.
Well, I would think so.
That's all I was sort of more going along the lines of.
Yeah.
But don't
Interesting
lose
guy.
It's like an episode of EastEnders. We're just waiting for you to go, and they pulled, waiting. So
Yeah,
can you remember what you was about to say, Mark?
yeah. So Malcolm was talking about a case that SPI were looking at, but again about 20, 30 years ago. And it was Malcolm and another gentleman called Brian McMullen. And Brian McMullen is no longer here, and unfortunately never had the pleasure of meeting him. But his family are all into the paranormal, and that you couldn't meet a nicer family if you tried. And Brian Senior was with the guy who was an experiencer, and they're walking. I think it was like out of a shop in Boots, and the guy transfigurated from a human to a grey, just totally in front of the guy, right in front of Brian McMullen's eyes. And Brian was like a no nonsense guy from Glasgow. Went, "Come here, you." Said, "I just saw you transform." And the guy went, "Yeah, I can't help it. I feel like pins and needles come all over me." This is down in England, by the way. I'm not entirely sure. I think it might be in Reading, but I'll need to double check that. He said it just feels like these pins and needles come over him, and he just has to change. And moreover, his girlfriend said that they were in bed one night, and he's speaking away. He's him and his girlfriend in bed, and his face again transfigurated into a grey. So it could be that not so. These sort of stories do make me believe that they do walk amongst us, but moreover, they might actually be us, or they may be some of us. But again, I've never seen anything like that. That is crazy.
I tell you, if my partner rolled over and she transfigurated in bed, I would run. Paul, I would be on the first one. The first question I would have asked, are they still together? That was, what did you do in that situation? What happened in that situation? That would freak me out. That would, you've got your evidence right in front of your eyes there that they walk amongst us. That's crazy.
I would ask if they could transfigurate into Megan Fox.
Yeah. Totally agreed. Right. So when you I'm going to sort of not change the subject completely, because I think it's a great thing. But in your little sort of synopsis that you sent over to us, there was a something to do with AI and ufology or UFOs. So we know obviously AI is increasing at a rate that is unbelievable at the moment. So what is the deal with that? What is it you're looking into, and sort of what you're a part of that, Mark?
Well, I haven't looked at it for a while, although I would like to get back into it. And so I can tell you about what I looked at in the past and what I'd like to look into the future. So it was 2022, and it was about 3 or 4 months before ChatGPT came out. And I started looking into things like AI, and I was just mentioned to Alison Dunlop, and Alison again is the organizer of the Scottish Conference and does a lot of work without anybody knowing about it. She's a phenomenal lady, and she said, "I think you should do a talk on AI and and UFOs." And to be honest, I didn't really know much about AI at all when I looked into it, and I kind of got immersed into the subject and tried to find out where AI could be applied and how we can use AI to actually get some real insights. And it's been interesting. Where I think AI, there are a number of things that AI can be used for. However, what I would say is it's not going to be this thing that is going to give us all answers. It just won't happen. And there's a lot of caveats to AI. It's not just just switch it on, ask it to give us the answer, and that's us. We've got the we've solved this problem. It's not going to happen that way. But there are some things we can use it for. Where I think it's going to be, I think there's about 3 or 4 things I would say it's going to be great for. And the first of all would be having some sort of app where instead of having to have a MUFON investigator come in and actually say get the experience. I don't know about yourself, but trying to actually speak to a witness, and you might get them a week or 2 weeks after you've actually witnessed an event. It might be years after an event. With an AI app, you could actually speak into an AI and actually get the account as fresh as you can. And that's really important. One of the things that the police do whenever they're trying to get a case is that they'll actually they've found that the sooner to the incident, the more truthful the account is. And because we all play it back in our head over and over again until what we actually witnessed and what we actually think we witnessed are completely different. So actually having AI to even things like ChatGPT to summarize the case and send it away is going to be that's going to be one of the biggest things that we can do. Again, it doesn't sound that interesting, but there's a lot of really good things in just doing that. The other thing I'd probably say is things like data cleansing. Now, I'm a data engineer in my normal job, and one of the reasons why data engineering exists is because the data is so dirty. And if you look at some of the data sets, like even Euphoric or MUFON's data sets, they're absolutely they're full of issues. So having AI being able to cleanse the data is going to be something that potentially has some merit. There are some features of where AI can be used for that. I think that's again, it's not interesting, it's not the cool or the sexy stuff, but it's one of the things that's going to be more practical. It's going to be able to make a real difference in how we actually collect data and how we actually use data going forward. And then there's probably the stuff that is a bit smarter and a bit cooler. And this would be looking at data sets that we've not looked at. And one of the things I think is overlooked is actually looking at us and looking at how we are affected by our experiences, by our encounters with either the paranormal or by UFOs, and I think that's going to be the real winner with AI. So I'll also tell you a bit why I think this has actually got a real potential with it as well. But nowadays, if you look at the biggest companies in the world, generally they're either involved with artificial intelligence like NVIDIA, or they're involved with data like Meta or Apple or Amazon, for example. And the reason why they're so rich is because data is considered the new oil. There's so much money in data that when you can actually extract it, you can actually make a lot of money from it. So that's why these companies are so interested in harvesting the data, because there's real money in it. But what they're getting from us, they're getting real insights into us. And it's that understanding of us that can really only be done by AI, is where we're going to get the insights. So to give you some very easy and simple analogies, I'd like to see what people who are experiencers are interested in. Are they more likely to be on spiritual Facebook groups? Are they more likely to be on more spiritual? But also, what about the sort of like the sort of markers? Like, say for example, we see people that are maybe got some form of they're talking about being in UFO groups. They're talked about seeing like blue balls of lightning, like Blue Alexander's spoken about, but they're also on cancer Facebooks as well. So the likelihood that these people maybe got suffering cancer or some form of some sort of illness, and what sort of illnesses are they've been affected by. These are the sort of things that we should be looking at, and this is where the AI really plays its part. Now, I'm just saying things like groups, Facebook groups is a very simple analogy, but AI can go into a depth that we just can't really look at. It can look at massive amounts of data sets over millions and millions of people to find trends that we probably wouldn't be able to find otherwise, and that's where the uh, that's where the power of AI is. Because if you're able to actually get these, find these trends, these hidden trends, so, then, then we're going to get real insights into the paranormal, and that's where it's that's its power. Now, just by chance, I do a co-host the Scottish Paranormal podcast with my friend Chris Meek, and we had Jim Segala on last year. Jim Segala was one of the guys who worked at Skinwalker Ranch, and he's part of NIDS under Hal Kutoff and supported by Bigelow essentially. And he was alluding to essentially the same thing. Is that's the sort of thing that NIDS is that are looking at, is the sort of that sort of social media data, because there's so much of it. I think like a Fitbit data has so much data on us. We can get real insights into using that data by AI. So that's where I think that we should be looking at.
Would that also sort of go down the line of, so for example, see, that's where my head goes. This is where my head goes with this AI sort of, this weaning, like what you said, it knows what parts of groups you're in, ufology groups, if it was in that. Now, would you say this you come across this person, that AI, this AI, data collection of everything like that, but you found out that they were in loads of paranormal groups, loads of UFO. Does that take away the experience they possibly could have? For example, that collection of data, that you could go along the lines of, do you believe that they would have made this up because of they've seen all this sort of stuff? Do you know what I'm saying?
Or predictive programming, sort of. Yeah. You're like you said earlier, with like-minded people, so you're going to experience what you're talking about, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
I get that.
So what chances are they going to be made up? I've never thought about that. So you're basically saying what chances of them to make it up? Potentially, we. Although I've not thought about that. One thing I could probably see is I don't know if AI has been used in this manner, and also there's massive amounts of ethical ethical scenarios around that. I'll give you an example of the one that's always talked about is, imagine you're on like something like Spotify, and what they're able to see is you've seen the choice of songs changing, and the choice of songs like sad songs, they can predict that you've broken up with a partner, and then you'll get marketing messages to get ice cream, and so. But a thing like ice cream, like an advert for Ben and Jerry's isn't too bad, but if it's an advert for like Smirnoff vodka, then all of a sudden then you're encouraging somebody who's vulnerable to start drinking.
Yeah.
So there's ethical boundaries around that. That first of all means that if anybody's actually spoken about it, about like how to use the item to uncover mental illness, they might be a bit sheepish about actually discussing the research. It potentially is possible, but I'm not looked into it.
It's just like head. It was
Yeah.
going around. As you said, like the more spiritual they are.
Yeah.
I think with AI though, it will look at so many different parts of your data.
Yeah.
That it will get to the point that whether you're in that paranormal group or ufology group won't even matter anymore, because other parts of your data are all connected without even them bits being involved in it.
Yeah.
But I can see a slight problem. I mean, I know it's far more advanced than like your algorithms and things you watch, and like what you just said. Then if you're listening to slower songs, then it might. I don't find my algorithm really works that well with me, because if I'm watching something, let's say I watch so many seconds of a certain video, so straight away that the algorithm then thinks that you're interested in that. I then spend the next couple of minutes, no, because it thinks I like that. It's staying showing me everything about that. If I mention, when you say your phones are talking, if I'm talking to someone, I say, I want to buy this, all of a sudden, what I'm telling my friend about I want to buy is all coming up on my phone. But I would have looked on that anyway, because I've already said I'm going to buy it. That scenario, it's just saved me the time in looking for it.
Yeah.
But because you just click on something for once, that algorithm already thinks that's it. That's what you like. That's what you. For me, it doesn't work with me.
I think I think though overall though I can see what you mean. Like say for example, I listen to an 80s song, and all of a sudden in YouTube I'm getting all the 80s songs coming on. It's not perfect, but I think it is getting better. So say for example, if you look at like something like YouTube or something like that, the amount of, and what you're saying, Paul, as well, is absolutely bang on. The amount of data they're collecting on you is phenomenal. Like they'll be looking at how long you looked at a post. If you looked at a post a bit longer than anything else, now what I would imagine with YouTube is they're probably doing that, or what ones are you swiping down at, or what ones are you maybe listening to for 30 seconds or all the way through, and then trying to get the algorithm to get a bit better. So even how long you're listening to things, I don't know about YouTube, but certainly for websites and things like Facebook, certainly they're looking at how long you're looking at posts and how long you're engaged for. So I'm going to surmise that, I'm going to surmise that YouTube will be doing the same things, and they'll be trying to get a little bit better. But it's, I don't think it's perfect, but it does get you, it does go in the right lines. I feel it kind of thinks, well, here's like for me with the algorithm, I find that there's a song I've never thought about, but I really like it, and it's picking out songs for me that that I've never heard of, but I do like, and they seem to be in the same genre. So I don't think it's perfect by any means, and it's probably going to be, some people are going to be a bit more obsessed, like myself, and maybe a bit more susceptible to an algorithm than yourself, Paul. But I think it is pretty good.
Yeah.
I think that the principle of it is there. I like the fact of what you said at the beginning as well. Like, the quicker you can gain that evidence, the quicker you can gain that, we've all been there. Everyone around in this thing, we've all been there. It doesn't matter if it's a spiritual encounter, UFO encounter. If you had that ability at that moment, you talk about voice recorders, that is sort of that principle in a modern technology of like, look, I've just this second experienced blah, 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 blah. As you say, 3 days later, even the morning after, you will still forget something. As you say, I think that's a real benefit for not just in the ufology side of things. I think in the whole paranormal field.
Oh yeah,
that
I've done it.
Yeah.
When I've called someone.
Yeah. Another thing as well is that you rationalize it. You go back home, you think, okay, it was maybe the floors creaking or something like that. So you rationalize things. So you're already putting things on it. So, like, I'll give you an example. I thought I saw a UFO. I think I've had 2 encounters this year, but one of them was like a bit. It was just like for doing less than a second. It was like that, and it was gone. And I'm thinking, well, I went to a paranormal conference that day, and I talked myself out of it. And I've done that loads of times. I've talked myself out of it, and I've rationalised things. And having something before you can even rationalise it is actually you're not talking. You're just telling you the more likely you're telling what the facts are rather than what you've rationalised the facts to be. I think it's a big
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that is a definitely and a way that this, as you say, even that the saying, "Oh, I felt silly to say it."
Yeah, yeah,
How many times do we hear that? Oh, I didn't want to say it because I felt like an absolute loon. Well, straight away, you've probably lost all the evidence, that the important bits, because we've been to people's houses and you ask them questions, oh, I can't, no, I don't know if I did feel like that. I did feel, and they're questioning themselves.
exactly. Yeah,
That's what, yeah. If we can take that away from it, that's that fundamental. I don't know if Paul Haywood in the chat as well. I know he does a lot of investigations like that, and I think that would benefit the paranormal field drastically. That first
yeah,
encounterness.
yeah,
Would-
100%. And I think like I'm talking about the stuff about like Facebook or social media, but I think there's decades of research to that. Like I think another example would be like say for example somebody as an adult has had an encounter. Now most of my encounters happened when I started seeing the paranormal when I was 6 and I had my real encounters when I was 11. What happened when somebody's 30 or 40 or 50? I'd love to see what sort of changes there are in that person, especially with their social media, for example. Like, are we seeing to all of a sudden we seeing things like, and again, we're not looking really. I'm saying social media groups. What I'm looking at are the trends. I'll give you a really good example of a trend that was found using AI. But um, what what sort of trends have changed? What sort of things have changed in that person? All of a sudden, they've started on UFO groups. Are they? But they starting to maybe have like depression groups or depression support stuff like that. How are they? And from there, what we're seeing how they changed from their encounter. Now, for the most part, if it's a one-off, it's probably not going to be a really good data point. But if we're seeing 10,000, 100,000, a million people who are seeing things as adults, and we're starting to see that there's a correlation between mental health issues and people who have seen things, then we can surmise that there's maybe a reason why these things are, and then we can actually gain insights. We can see, well, if these things are coming to like people mainly as children, they probably know that as adults it's affecting us, and so they're doing it to children, so it's not having an impact on our well-being as adults. So it gives us an insight of the phenomena by studying us. We're actually the best markers that are out there to see how it's affecting us. Is actually will give us insight on how the phenomena is interacting with us.
yeah.
I think it's a great point. I do, but
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
it leads right onto my next sort of question with you, Mark. You are looking into the counselling side of things
Yeah.
for people who have had paranormal experiences. Now, that in itself is quite unique because I haven't, come across anything like that or heard, and that's why it stuck out to me when you touch bases with us.
Yeah.
I'm looking into sort of helping people who are having these experiences. As rightly said, just prior to then, what effect, and I don't want to sound like that anybody that I know has had issues with the paranormal, but there is times within 24 hours to 48 hours after events, not events that we run, but a paranormal experience. I will use Simon for one. When we went to Rendlesham Forest, it took a long time for Simon to come back to what I would call the here and now.
Yeah.
I would also put Sandra in Cannock Chase, as well as what had gone on at the here and now. It took, and we're talking days. We're not talking hours. We're talking days of a psychological event here, and I think that is very interesting. So I'd just like to pick your brains on that, Mark, and how you're leading that, for example.
Yeah. Well, yes, it's in a lot of ways. I always think of myself as doing more investigation work than probably anybody in Scotland, but at the same time doing nothing because I'm actually actively becoming a counsellor. So so I'm over and above my job and everything else. I'm studying to be a counsellor. I've done the first year, first out of 4, and we're actually learning proper techniques. So I'll be, by the end of this, in another 3 years' time, I will be a qualified counsellor and be able to help people. Now, where it came about was I was on a Skywatch, and I got speaking to this really nice guy, and I really love chatting to people. And again, it's a community that I love. I absolutely love. It's a big part of my life, and I love speaking to people. And I got speaking to this one guy, and what saddened me was I don't think he had a paranormal encounter. I think he was having night terrors. I don't think there was anything paranormal. But he's coming over to these to these sky watches to get answers. He's trying to process what happened to him. He's trying to process the trauma. And I was just so upset by that I went to an introduction to counselling course in Glasgow, and took a year, and then had to wait another year, and then start this counselling course. And it's as I've gotten more into it, I've realised that I've learned a lot. And actually, what I didn't know was how much of an impact the early psychoanalysts like Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung were really into paranormal. But it's the main goal is to actually be able to be a point where, for free and anonymously, for people to speak. And it really doesn't matter, because a lot of the people that I've noticed that are going to be having, like, when we go to speak to witnesses and stuff like that, I would have to say, and I'm sorry if this comes across as bad, but a majority of witnesses I speak to probably haven't seen anything. They might be lonely, they might have mental health issues. Now, I can't help with mental health issues, but certainly if you can give somebody, there's something that was once said in the course, one of the kindest things and one of the things that few people actually get is given space to be listened to. So even if it's somebody who's just lonely, maybe making it up, but listening to them, giving them compassion, even that is valuable. But where it's going to be really valuable is the people who have had some sort of effect, whether it's real or not. Now, again, I've seen loads of things myself, and it's taken me a long time to process these out over the years. I've been really frightened by these things over the years. So it's giving these people the ability to have somebody that's going to be compassionate to them, is going to give them the regard. They're not going to think, oh, this guy's crazy, and just listen to them and give them the support, give them that emotional support, give them that respect they need. And that is so important. And what my hope is that I'd maybe do like a counselling thing for it, maybe make a bit of money off it on the side. But if it's for the paranormal, as a paranormal encounter, it'd just be for free, it'd be anonymous, and it'd be like the person would be treated with the utmost respect and confidence. So that's why I'm doing it. I've learnt a lot, and I really didn't anticipate the links between the paranormal and psychoanalysis. That's been very interesting.
Oh, I like that. Good luck to you, mate. Good luck. It's a really nice thing.
Yeah.
And I think it needs it.
Yeah.
I think I think working in the field that we've worked for, and I suppose more over the last few years with owning a shop to do with the paranormal, and the more that you come across that people want to speak to you, and it feels like they need to let it go. It's been a burden throughout their life that it's like I think it's and I do think that open and honest, as you say, anonymously, no one's to be judged. Coming from like yourself, had these experiences. I'm not going to judge you because I've been in your boots. I had no one to talk to. And there is things out there that exist beyond our imagination. We talk about poltergeists, we talk about demons. We can all brush it under the carpet, but there is people out there that have experienced dark phenomena that live in fear that will come back. There is people that have been abducted by aliens. There is people that have been fearful that what they've seen but they're bottling it up inside because they can't talk about this. I think it's a really good thing to push forward. I really do.
And I think a lot of people who like there's an incident I didn't deal with this is my friend Chris has dealt with it, and I live near a place called Bathgate Hills, and Chris spoke to a guy who witnessed an alien. I'm allowed to talk about the incident. The guy witnessed two aliens walking his dog, and what I remember Chris was saying was this guy had to tell the story. He had to tell it, and that's what needs. And a lot of counselling nowadays is based on a guy called Carol Rogers, and his base things were just basically you show people empathy, you show them like regard, like you just give them like positive regard. Some people say that's like being loving or something like that, but I think it's just being like, and the last thing is to be congruent, like just like be completely honest. So it's not any of that fakeness, it's you're honestly there because you want to be there to listen to this guy and help him. And as you're saying before, Russ, that's absolutely right. People have to tell their stories. They're bottled up. It sometimes it's killing them. So having an ability to actually speak to somebody is really important. I don't know anybody. I think Cass Clark had a few counsellors in Wales, but I don't know anybody in Scotland that does it, and I don't know about anybody in England either.
No.
To be fair, I don't. I can't even. I wouldn't even know where to start, and it gets my brain active. That when we talk about these encounters, I'll go along the spiritual side of things here.
Yeah.
When we have a dark entity that comes into a young person's life and it gives them hell, okay? My belief is that entity that comes into that person's life will feed on that fear, will feed on that negative vibe that they're getting, that fear of, look, I can't talk. And I think someone like yourself or these let's call them paranormal counselors for the sake of it. I think that would break that cycle. I think that will break that energy, that negative energy that is trying to get to that person, because they're talking about it. They're talking about it and giving enlightenment to it. I think that's a great paranormal help in a subconscious that people don't know. I think breaking that, that fear factor. Sorry, Simon, go.
If you look at that, the thing is, if you were to get a spiritual thing happen, we've had it. Your really only guidance is to a priest or a exorcism. If you had that, and I don't think that's always needed. I think if you could actually talk about your incident and go through it, I think it's a great idea. I do think it's brilliant.
And I generally do think a lot of these people just want to hear, I've been in your boots before. I know what you're going through. And most of us around this, this screen have had some form of experience that people can relate to. And that's important. And as I say, Mark, your background from, the age of 6, you said you've had spiritual encounters, paranormal encounters. People will look to that and say, well, they're not going to judge me because they've been in my boots.
Yeah.
That's important. Fair play to you, Mark. Hats off. Absolutely run with it and don't hold back, because I think that the paranormal field needs.
It does. It does.
Like that.
It honestly does. Yeah.
And I say, I talk from a belief from the people that cross my path. Strangers that walk into our shop
every day
to tell you.
I'm talking every day. I'm not talking once a week. It's every day you'll get somebody.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I can come in here and talk to somebody who won't laugh at me, who won't judge me.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the thing, is it's not to be judged. Do you know what really annoyed me? Do you remember people like Louis Theroux? I cannot stand that man, and it's because he had things like UFOs on, and they had one guy who was a military veteran who came on. He was in that situation. He had to tell that story. He told him to Louis Theroux, but Louis Theroux's got that sort of smirking, sort of crappy behaviour. It's not needed, and a lot of the time as well, it's I think there's 100 different types of ways it affects us, and we just it won't be that much, but see, like I remember one of the things that probably the biggest lessons was having somebody listen to you is one of the sometimes the person never had it before, and just to have that, just even if it's just to actively listen to somebody, that's probably realistically that's what I'm going to be able to do for most people. But even that and that sort of like, but really mean it, non-judgmental is you're going to be able to do a lot to help people.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
You've got the backing of all three of us on that one. Run with it and go with it because it's
Probably
needed.
a lot more.
Yeah,
Good luck.
you know. I know we're just getting towards time. I just want to touch on one thing because there was Simon has said the name of the place when you kept cutting in and out. BAFTA Bridge, is it BAFTA Hill or something?
Bathgate Hills.
That's it.
Bathgate Hills.
Yes,
Simon,
it.
I'll go over to you on that one because there was something that you wanted to ask, wasn't there?
Yeah, the Grey Man sightings. Is that Bagley Hills?
No, the Grey Man is Ben McDewey. So Ben McDewey is an absolute bollock to get to. There's no other way to get to it. It's a second. It's only a few feet smaller than Ben Nevis, and it's a real trek to get. I've actually done it once, and it's a real walk. Now Ben McDewey's in the Cairngorms, right in the north of Scotland, and it is really beautiful. But but that's Ben McDewey is again. It's a mountain, second highest mountain in Britain, and the Grey Man has been seen numerous times. There's a really good book called the Grey Man of Ben McDewey by Affleck Gray. But over and above that, Chris Meek and Paul Sinclair are very interested in the Grey Man. I've got one case of a guy who's actually experienced like the footsteps to that area. Also, Chris Meek was there last year and had recorded some phantom noises. But there's cases have been going back there for at least a century, if not longer. Affleck wrote about it I think in the 60s or the 70s, and it was a really good book. And he broke it down to not just actual sightings of a kind of a yeti-like creature, but also things like mind speak, phantom footsteps, phantom like that feeling of fear. Basically, he did a really good job. Looked at a lot of the newspapers and found a lot of the lot of the sightings basically. So that's the Grey Man. And again, I would definitely recommend Affleck Gray's book. He's been dead for a long time, and I've never dealt with him. It's just the book is very good. There are a couple of Bigfoot sightings in and around of Scotland. So the most popular one, other than Ben McDewey, is in the place. It's called the Silver Man, which is only 2 miles away from where I live, and it's in a place called the Bathgate Hills. Now, myself and Chris have been kind of shouting a bit about the Bathgate Hills, and we found out that Ash Ellis down in I think it's like Manchester area, Liverpool area, been collecting a database, and he's been finding that most of the UFO sightings are coming from either the Bathgate Hills or from the other side of Edinburgh. I'm only about 10 miles away from the outskirts of Edinburgh, so it's Livingston where I live is a commuter town, and Bathgate is a town next to it. It's got David Tennant, the Doctor Who guy, is from Bathgate, and the hills they're not a big hill range. And they're not that high either, but a lot of the area has got a phenomenal amount of paranormal activity. Now, if you've ever been to Edinburgh, I can actually see them from my house. There's a big hill range called Pentlands. We do get occasional things happen there, but not much. Bathgate Hills is extremely active. So if I can tell you a few things that are probably not well known and not really documented outside of that, the Silver Man was first seen in 1986 by a guy called David Coleman. David was driving past a woodland called Ravenscraig Wood, and as he was driving, he noticed this like bipedal creature that he named the Silver Man actually followed him and was actually running about the same pace as the car. And he surmised it was going about maybe 60 to 70 miles per hour. So it was extremely fast. only saw it for a few seconds, and that was it. But probably what's interesting in the past few years, I got speaking to a guy that during COVID actually had a sighting of the Silver Man himself. He just didn't go into any explanation. I didn't meet him in person, just through Facebook. I got speaking to this guy. But what was really interesting is that he was saying that he was like seeing like these sort of ethereal sort of beings. Nearby is a henge called Cairn Papel, and Cairn Papel's it's not like a henge like Stonehenge. It's got a few stone circles, but it's actually on a hill, which is really rare for a henge. And the standing stones are actually in a kind of a dome-like structure now. And there's this guy, the witness, and another guy have seen these sort of like ethereal sort of beings in and around that sort of area. I've also spoken to a lot of people who are actually active in the hills, and there's been a lot of sightings. There's been sightings of ghosts. There's been two campers were staying one night in the hills, and they felt like footsteps approaching their camp. They got out, didn't see anybody. I knew a few young lads were fishing at a local loch. A loch is the Scottish lake, and they saw like a figure walking past. We thought it was a guy walking past on this path. Looked around, the guy's gone. But probably the more interesting case of recently happened about 5 years ago, and it was documented by my friend Chris Meek, where these aliens were actually, this guy was walking his dog, and he saw like blue sort of like lights in a woodland. He walked along, and he thought it was poachers in the woods. He made it like he's making himself known, like shouting at his dogs, and the dogs were like, "No, we're not going anywhere near it." And then eventually got the dogs back, put them in the car, and came back. And he saw like a being, a small being, and a large being. And the small being took off this like cloak, like an invisibility cloak from Harry Potter, to show a spaceship. They both got in, and this guy's hiding behind the bush. Then the spacecraft started like ascending, stopped, and started coming down. These guys were wearing these alien beings were wearing these sort of masks, and the guy was like, "Oh, this is crazy. This is too much." And they stopped, and he had like some sort of telepathic messages to say they won't believe him anyway, and then they flew off. So that was about 5 years ago. There's also another case, a guy called Andy Swan, had a black triangle. It's in a town called Armadale. He's driving along, car switched off, and even the police came along. He saw the flat triangle, and the next day the car went back on. I got speaking to a guy who lived in Armadale. It's a small town, not much to it, and the resident said that there's so many incidents of UFOs that are seen from this Cairn Papel henge, which is quite visible from the town. That it's not that it's an everyday sighting, but they are quite common by a lot of people in the town. So it's a phenomenal amount of stuff. It's ghosts, it's Bigfoot, it's fairy-like beings, but it's also aliens and UFOs. So it's a really active place.
It's the A to Z of activity, isn't it? Let's be honest. So
it's
got it all.
And now you ask me why I want to go to Scotland.
Yeah.
Well, certainly that's one of the places that I would say is probably the most active. I know things like Bonnie Bridge, for example, do get a bit of chat, and then Deckman right next to where I am. But for me, it's that Ravenscraig Wood and Bathgate Hills is by far the most by far the most active. And even from a spiritual point of view, I went with a medium start of the year, and we were picking up stuff. There's actually an old abandoned stone circle next to it. We went in, showed them, and this the medium felt this presence of a ghost there. So yeah, if you want to come up, I'm happy to show you. And it's right next to A70. I'm only 5 miles away from where Gary Woods got abducted, a mile away from Dykeman Woods, where Robert Taylor got abducted, and the Dogman, and like 2 miles away from Ravenscraig Woods. So if I disappear, I've probably been abducted by an alien.
Yeah. There's abductions all around. Come up and visit. Brilliant.
Can't hear you, Russ.
Rush, you've gone.
Am I back?
Yes.
Yes.
So that was my fault. I turned it up to make sure I could hear everything that you were saying, and I muted the microphone, so I do apologise. But it's been fascinating, Mark, to have you on the show.
Have to come back.
Yeah, definitely have to come back and tell us some more experiences that you're having. It sounds like the location that you're in. It sounds like paranormal hotspots. Where's that place in the States, Paul, where the paranormal hotspot is? You know, that town that we talk about in the States. It sounds like that, doesn't it?
Not sure that like Roswell.
No, the other one. Now, there's a whole TV program on it in the States, paranormal, where they get abducted and see everything.
Hellier.
Where is it? Sorry?
Hellier.
Don't know. I can't think what it's called.
Yeah, there was a recent program called Hellier about it. There's like a lot of synchronicity seemed to happen in that town.
It's like, it just sounds like it's mental. You know, I know we've got like our little hotspots down here, you know, like Rendlesham that, you know, is around, but that sounds crazy, from like Dogman to Bigfoot to
Yeah.
You know.
Well, my understanding, I'm friends with a guy called Alex Lovelock who does a lot of stuff in Rendlesham, and he says it's kind of, Rendlesham's kind of peaked about 2016, 2017. There's not much happening down there, but the same as Bonnybridge, for example. Bonnybridge has been quite quiet. Now, what I will say is that I'm actually actively looking out, and I'm actually speaking to other investigators. You could probably tell that a lot of the investigations are from my friends like Chris or from Malcolm, and also the couple of the people I'm investigating as well. I do go up to Deckman Woods almost every night, and I do ask people, what do you think? And the majority of people are like, well, we've heard about the UFO story, but they're not really into it, or they're not really believers. But there are things that do happen. What I'm actually surprised at, Si, is you knew about the Mid-Calder, because that is, those things are not publicly well known about the Mid-Calder Woods, but there's been several ghosts being seen in Mid-Calder Woods. That's
There's a hell of a lot in Scotland that I want to get to for some reason. Don't ask me why.
And I would imagine that this is the same everywhere. It's just by luck that where I am. I think there's actually a reason why I'm here, probably for another day. But there is quite active around here, and what we're finding as well is that there's a few other places. A few of my friends and I, we think that would be like the east coast, in particular of the UK. Like you talk about, like in Yorkshire, Paul Sinclair, even like down Rendlesham. That's quite east coast as well, isn't it? It just seems to be that area seems to be quite active. So yeah, we're trying to keep my eye on it. The stuff with the fight stuff is happens when we can. I have spoken to a few witnesses, but I haven't written it up or gone too far in it, other than Stan Smith coming on the podcast to say about his incident where he was stalked by the dogmen. So if you want to look at that, it's on the Scottish Paranormal Podcast, and you'll also see things about Andy Swan with the Black Triangle. David Coleman was on it talking about the Silver Man. A few of the sightings I'm talking about are actually all on there just now.
And that's the Scottish Paranormal Podcast.
Scottish Paranormal Podcast. I'm the co-host. The main guy is Chris Meek, and Chris is a phenomenal guy, phenomenal researcher.
Okay, look, brilliant, fantastic.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be looking into that over the next couple of days. Mark, thank you ever so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's get you back on in a couple of months' time. Let's see what's gone on, and then we'll be, just like don't be a stranger. Hope you can join us week in, week out, and let us know. Just let us know what's going on up there, because it sounds amazing.
And I will get up there, Mark. I will get up there by hook or by crook. I'm coming.
If you're up here, say it's I'm right next to Edinburgh. You're 20 minutes on a train from Edinburgh, and there's loads around here. There's loads.
Brilliant. Thank you.
We've been to Livingston. We used to.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
That was for spiritual. That was for spirit.
That
spirit. We used to work for Telewest.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it used to be in Edinburgh. So we
Yeah.
went up, we got called up there for a business trip, which was, and that would be, and we stayed with someone in Livingston at that time.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's the only time I've ever been to Livingston. So I've been there, but I was never ever at that time was not into the paranormal. So it was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was,
But
it was a long time ago.
hopefully we can arrange something over the next sort of year or so to get up to Scotland and at least up and do something. It would be great.
Yeah, it would be great, and certainly be happy to have and show you and show you around. I certainly know a few places, a few quieter places. I can even show you Mid Calder and show you the woods where that's not well known. The ghost of a photographer, ghost of a young girl. We've been in the woods at night as well with the paranormal investigation team, and it is pretty spooky, and it's an interesting area. It was where the cattle used to come in, and it was going down north, and there's a lot of raiders, a lot of thieves. Actually, there's actually called Thieves Road that actually take you through the Pentland Hills, and that's where the A70 incident happened. So there's loads around there that you could talk about.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So, guys, that has come towards the end of the show today. We will be back next week. Simon won't be here next week. Just stay there, Mark, and we'll catch you in a minute. Don't disappear for a minute. Me and Paul will be back next week. I don't know what we're going to talk about. We'll find something to talk about. Simon, enjoy your holiday. We'll see you in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, enjoy.
Cheers.
Don't get too burnt. Make sure you're putting a bit of sun cream on that bald patch. And
look, mate, I'm going to Crete, so there's going to be a bit of investigation as well. Don't panic.
so
I'll be sending you videos every night. Look.
So thank you for everyone that has joined us tonight. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.